people don't know what to say and they don't know how to deal with someone who's grieving, especially in the very first instance, the first few weeks and months. But then also when someone comes back to work, it's like, Mom, what do I do? Do I say something? Do I not say something? And actually there's a bit of a lightness around someone just saying, how is such and such? How are you doing after the death of such and such? It's quite honest. But you have to be able to do that. And also read the person that's in front of you. Do they seem like you actually just want to get on with the day? Rather than talk about it, or do they actually they do want to talk about who this person was? They have a memory they want to share, and that's okay. Yeah. But so that's something I think for managers at the workplace is like, well, how do you manage that? Do you tell the rest of the staff, so and so, Michelle is off because her mum died? Or do you just say, no, she's fine at the moment? And I think you have to ask that person, what's best for you?
Welcome again to another episode of the Equality Edit. If you've listened to all of them so far, then well done. And also, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. We would love more subscribers, although you are beautiful and amazing as you are. So please do share this with others. Rate it if you're listening to it on Spotify, and please subscribe to it on YouTube as well. It helps my ego boost a lot. Today, I'm joined by a wonderful guest, Michelle, who was introduced to me by another guest we had a few months ago, Teresa. So I'm going to let Michelle introduce herself and tell you her story, and then we will get into the main episode of the podcast. So welcome, Michelle. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Essie. It's lovely to be here. I appreciate it. Appreciate the opportunity. Yeah, my name's Michelle Clayford. I'm an independent celebrant, which means that I work with people around life's kind of milestones, whether it be a naming of a child, or a renaming of an adult if they're transitioning, funerals, celebrations of life, weddings, vow renewals. It can be anything, really, that they want to mark. But I'm mostly very passionate about death education and making sure that people are pre-planned for that and that we break the taboos around death and dying and bereavement, because it's something that's going to affect every single one of us. So it's very important.
That is so true. I think it probably started as a glib joke, but it's also true. There's only a few things that are true in life, birth and death, and not necessarily taxes, because some people don't have birth and death. They are the truest. So, I mean, we were talking about this when we were talking about what we were going to discuss. There are so many taboos around death, aren't there? And I have my opinion on where they may be coming from and how they might be sustained. But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, there's just so many years ago, I was a sexual health youth worker. So I spent 13 years going into schools, primary, secondary, special education needs schools, universities and colleges, talking to people about the basics around sex and relationships, consent, and how they want their first home to look like, etc. And I don't really see death as being much different. It's still a taboo. People don't really like to talk about it. It makes people very uncomfortable. There's a lot of myths and, just misinformation about what's going to happen. We don't educate people. Like, if you're pregnant and you're going to give birth, you have a midwife. And they go through every step of what's going to happen. You're completely supported throughout that journey. When someone's dying, we don't really have that, and there are some midwives and death doulas and people like myself, death educators, who help people to understand what this all means. I think for some people, when you say that someone's dying, they imagine it's going to be like that. It's not. It can be a very long, drawn-out process. For some people, it is very quick. For other people, like my mum, she had a life-limiting illness, went on for about 5 years, so we lived with that knowledge that she was going to die. There was nothing medically that could be done. But that's a very difficult situation for someone to be in, for the person who is dying, living with that, but also for their family and friends. And then the week of her final kind of journey, preparing that, I was very grateful for the knowledge that I had and the workshops I've been to with Katie Costello, who's a soul midwife, who talked about some of the things that I had no idea about. I'm also very grateful for my friend who's a senior carer and who has helped people through that very final journey. And knowing this is normal, this is what's going to happen, this is what it looks like, how things change. And death has become so medicalised. Like, it used to very much be, it was in the community. And I really strongly feel we need to bring death back into the community rather than just going, oh, you go to hospital or you go to a hospice. There's absolutely a place for both of those. However, there's also a very big place for you can die at home. This is what it will look like. You don't have to call a funeral director immediately as long as it's not. And being clear when I'm talking here, this is not a suspicious death. So if this is a death that you know is coming, then yes, you can stay with that person for a while. Like there's so much. And I think as disabled people, sometimes we are left out of those conversations deliberately. We could be infantilized, and also people just don't. They just think, oh, we're not going to understand. Not taking into account that people can very much understand and need to be included in these conversations. It's very confusing. So I'm very much, I just think, we need to talk about it. We need to educate people so that we feel empowered to deal with it, because it is going to happen to every single one of us. 1 in 29 children experience a death of a parent.
Oh, wow.
So when they're at school, this is, by saying we're not going to talk to children about this, is doing them a really big disservice. And school is a safe place when home might be very sad or difficult or angry, grief-filled. They want to come to school and be safe. That doesn't mean that we don't talk about these things. We need to let people, things that teachers and children know, that how to be kind to each other and how to treat their friends, how to understand that it's okay if you're really sad one moment, but then you're playing with your friends and laughing the next, but then feeling sad again. Called puddle jumping, so we jump in and out of our grief. Adults do it too. And that's completely normal. Just like when you lose somebody at some point, you are going to might feel guilty for laughing at a joke or something. And actually, it's okay. It doesn't mean that you're not grieving. Grief doesn't really look one particular way. All these things I think are very, very important. And as adults, we need to understand our relationship with grief so that we can then support the young people in our lives, but also each other.
Everything you've just said is really interesting. I'm just going to pull out a few bits that kind of brought some things up for me. So actually, I have an interesting history with death, I guess you would say. I went to a school for physically disabled children. And there was a lot of children with limiting disabilities. So I would say in the 5 years, 11 to 16, I was at school, I probably went to about 6 funerals.
Wow, that's a lot for a child. For anybody.
I remember on my very first day of school, literally my very first day, we were taken into, because it was a boarding school. I was a day girl, but it was a boarding school. So we were taken into the main room and told somebody had died. Amelia had died. And I was like, that's weird. And I went home and mum said, oh, it's your first day. And I was like, I don't think I died. I don't know. How do you feel about that? I was like,
I don't know.
It's weird.
Quite a lot for a first day, isn't it, really?
Absolutely, for the first day. And under 11 didn't have, it was so weird. And so a couple of months later, somebody else had died, but I also didn't know. Because some of these kids had then gone into hospital, or they were older and were remembered by the younger kids.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And so the second kid had died, and I went home and I couldn't stop crying. And I said to my mum, I don't know why I'm crying, because when Amelia died, I didn't worry. But I think it was not processing. And then it wasn't necessarily about the person, but about the act or the thing, the idea that somebody was there and then they weren't. It was just, it was a bit scary. And then as I got older, we kind of used it, and this is really kind of a bit macabre, but it was kind of like a way to get out of class. So somebody would die and we'd be brought into the hall. Oh, so sorry to say, or whoever's died. put your hand up if you want to go to the funeral. Oh my God, I've got maths. Yes, I want to go. I want to go. And so some of the funerals, I hate to say I went to because it was an afternoon out of the classes that I didn't want to go to. And I think it was a positive and a negative, not getting an afternoon out of class and not being around death so much, but because it gave me this kind of understanding that death is just part and parcel. So
Yes, and it
when I
is.
got
Yes.
older and family members and friends, as like older family members would die, and I had a couple of friends die when I was younger. It was obviously really sad, but it was also manageable because of
Yeah.
the experiences I'd already had.
Yeah, and I think that experience isn't uncommon. For some children, they don't have that experience at all. I think, yeah, for your very first day at school to be, that's quite a lot to deal with. However, yes, you did then understand this is what's going to happen. And obviously, our brains don't fully develop till we're in our mid-20s, so we don't really understand its future. We're not going to be here, etc., etc. So that takes a long time to actually settle in. And so children need a lot of support through that time because the death affects the, say, in their first year of secondary school may not fully hit them until they're in their fourth or fifth year when they're doing GCSEs. Like there's a whole process, which is why we need to be able to support everybody in the whole family through that well. And for a lot of people, their first experience of death might either be a grandparent or it might be a pet, which is often why we'll get pets because they tend to have shorter lifespans. And that is a good way, in a sense, to introduce this concept to children. But there are lots of other things that we can do, like death is all around us. Like it's not something that you can hide from. So talking about wars or reading a book, and then Disney films are full of death. And I think it's really important to talk about, have a healthy discussion around these things that is age appropriate. Not going into too much detail if it's a very young child. They just need information. But it is also scary. So it can be very scary. So it's looking at how you discuss these things. And the Child Bereavement Trust and Winston's Wish do a whole heap of amazing resources to help families speak to the children and young people in their lives because, yeah, we do need some help with this. It's fine to admit that you need help and to reach out. And there's some excellent books and things around it.
It's interesting, isn't it? But thank you very much for that. And we'll put those links in the show notes as well, because I think that would be really interesting for people and helpful for people as well. It's interesting, though. I was having a conversation with somebody else. So I had asked if his child that we were talking about was his firstborn. He said, no, we had a child that died at birth. And he said to me, like, after we'd been talking about it for a bit, he said, I didn't want to just say yes because that would have been an easy answer, but it's not true. And he was saying how there just isn't language as a parent of a child that's died. There's no language. So if you're a child with the parents died, you're an orphan. Or I can't think of the other, but there's other examples of if you're on the other side, there's a word for it, but there's no word for a parent who loses a child. And I think that's such a that feeds into that taboo so much, doesn't it? And that lack of conversation, that there's literally no language.
Absolutely. And yeah, how awful. Because you're still a parent.
Yeah.
You've still gone through the pregnancy journey and you may well have birthed that child or been present and biological or non-biological parent of that child. When that child dies, you are still a parent to that child. You're still a mother or a father. But you don't walk out of the hospital with your child, or you have to bury or cremate your child. That's an awful thing. And I think it's too confronting for a lot of people. They see the death of a child as the worst possible thing that could happen, and they don't want to imagine it might be like. So I think that's also partly maybe why we don't have a word for parents who have lost their child has died. And yeah, it's very difficult. I was reading something, when you have a baby and you leave the ward, some places, probably more in America, you press a little like on your way out and it sings the lullaby, which is lovely. But if a parent has a stillbirth or they've lost their child, and often the nurses will say, do you mind if we don't do that because somebody is grieving? And there was an interesting kind of discussion in the comments about some people being very understanding, other ones like, well, should we not celebrate the joy someone else's birth. It's like, we can do both. And we didn't
Yeah.
always have this. So I think it's okay to be sensitive to the fact that other people may not be feeling as great and happy as you are about leaving with your lovely bundle of joy. Some people are going home with empty arms, and that is not what was expected.
But that's very kind of to be kind of to be outraged that somebody's asked you that is it goes beyond kind of this death conversation, doesn't it? And this kind
So
of conversation about life.
yes,
That's about empathy and compassion for another person.
exactly. Yes, absolutely it is. And I think sometimes we can lose that sense of compassion and empathy. But again, because people just don't know what to say.
Yeah.
And often that's the thing, is that people don't know what to say and they don't know how to deal with someone who's grieving, especially in the very first instance, the first few weeks and months. But then also when someone comes back to work, it's like, Mum, what do I do? Do I say something? Do I not say something? And actually there's a bit of a lightness around someone just saying, how is such and such? How are you doing after the death of such and such? It's quite honest. But you have to be able to do that. And also read the person that's in front of you. Do they seem like you actually just want to get on with the day? Rather than talk about it, what do they actually say? They do want to talk about who this person was. They have a memory they want to share, and that's okay. Yeah. But so that's something I think for managers at the workplace is like, well, how do you manage that? Do you tell the rest of the staff, so and so, Michelle is off because her mum died? Or do you just say, no, she's dying at the moment? And I think you have to ask that person, what's best for you?
Do you think that should be part of the kind of the return to work a few weeks before? How would you like?
Yes.
It's a bit like that mental health well-being kind of toolkit, isn't it? How would you like
Yes.
me to support you through this?
Absolutely. Yeah. And even if it's you have a little signal or there's something where you can go, I just don't want to.
Yeah.
I can't do that today, or I'm feeling very emotional and I just need 5 minutes. So my manager, main job I work in, which is not as independent salary, it's my self-employed business. His father died last year, and I knew that he'd been out of business, but I didn't know why. But I figured it was probably something like that because he was in and out all the time. Just the guy was. And when we finally got to meet, it was such a refreshing relief to be able to just be very honest with each other about how we were feeling and understanding we both lost a parent and how emotional that was. And that if we're having a bad day, we could just say, I just need 5 minutes or I need a hug. And he's been incredibly understanding and supportive throughout all of that process. And we're not scared to have those difficult conversations, I suppose, that some people are really able to step away from. And that's made a world of difference to me at work.
So my friend lost her son. Her son died, I think it was about 3-4 years ago now. And I sent her a couple of messages just to say, I'm not going to keep asking you because I know that you don't want me to, but I'm here if you would like to talk. When we met up, I asked her stories about what they would do together. So she was able to talk about
Lovely.
it, but not necessarily about the end. But she was able to talk about those happy memories as well. I was also taught once, because I was a Samaritan, so I was told, if you don't know what to say, just say, I'm not sure what to say, but I'm here if you would like to talk.
Yes, and that's kind of perfect. Some of the worst things people can say is, oh, just let me know if you need anything. And then not following up with when you are she asked, just saying nothing. Yeah, it's absolutely fine to say, I just don't know what to say. Things along the lines of, oh, they're in a better place now. There was also another instance at work and somebody had a miscarriage. And they said, no, it's okay, you can have another. Or you can try again. No. Can we just put that absolute? This is not a thing to say. God won't give you more than you can carry. I think that's part of what the education around this can be. Is that, let's not say that. What you could say is, how are you doing How are you doing today? How are you doing right now? Would you like me to walk the dog? Would you like to come for a walk with me? I can come over and tidy the house, change the bed, do some washing up, make you some food. Does that sound like? it might be a good thing to do. And when my mum did die, friends rallied, and we had lots of people at her bungalow helping us clear it out because she was renting. So we only had a short amount of time. So we had to get it all out and cleaned and everything. And it was incredible. And that made such a difference. We had people that sent like Deliveroo or Just Eat vouchers. So it meant that we didn't have to worry about cooking.
Yeah.
Another friend delivered lots of food from M&S. So we just, again, didn't have to worry about things. And that made all the difference. Again, and if you think back to the stories you kind of hear about from back in the day, people would turn up with casserole or your neighbours would turn up with things.
Yeah.
And there's a reason for that, because you need to eat. You might not feel like it, but you need to. Your body needs fuel. And also it's a physical way for people to show that they care.
Exactly.
And I think that's really important. And things, people tend to drift away after a few months. And that can be incredibly lonely and difficult as well.
Yeah, but the cause is still there. And what I heard from when you were saying just there wasn't, let me know if you'd like me to make your bed. Let me know if you'd like to. Shall we? So I and that actually, I'm going to take that as a lesson. So rather than saying, I'm here if you want me to, I'm going to not pushing yourself on something.
Yeah, no, obviously, with consent, etc. But
with
yes,
consent, but I'm
give an
going to do
idea.
this for you
Yes,
because I know it's going to be helpful.
yes.
So another thing I did was I said, I'd like to send you flowers. Couldn't you send me your address? No. I mean, obviously I wouldn't say, if you'd like flowers, let me know. But it's kind of like, this is what my intention is. So you don't have to feel as though you have to say no. Or
Yes.
you don't have to do anything else. I'm just telling you that this is my intention and I want to do it.
Yeah, but also being careful with the fact for some people they don't want flowers because they die. So that's
True.
Secondly, that's something you've got to take them out of the paper, you've got to cut them, you've got to put. So just again being aware, I'm not saying it's the wrong thing to do, and also don't take it personally if someone says no, thank you, but I'd like you to do this, or can you do this? I have heard of other people who say, generally speaking, women tend to outlive their husbands if you're in a relationship and feeling very lonely in bed and not be able to sleep. And so friends they'd put up a rota. So there was always somebody to sleep next to the widow. And so she never felt alone, and just a little thing like that can really make all the difference.
Yeah.
And I suppose, we'll come on some bits in a minute, but really respecting your friend or your family member. And also, if you ask them what they want, they may not have a clue. Like our brains change so much during grief. Add perimenopause onto that, or chronic fatigue, all the other things, you're just unable to function. So,
And you were talking about kind of trying to raise funding for a toolkit. Would this be part of that toolkit? And can you tell us a little bit about that?
yeah, it would be. So what I did create is a little kind of booklet, and it's called Respecting Death and Dying. As a queer woman, I wanted to make sure that we had tools within our community to understand what we need to do, why we need to do it, why it's so important for members of the LGBTQIA+ communities to pre-plan. Looking at things like lasting power of attorney, making sure you've written a will, that you have the respect for. Because if you are in a conventional relationship, as it were, although you can't be married now, we can't legally be married. If you are living with somebody else, unless you've got things in writing, you may not have any protection over where you live. So for some people, not only will they lose their partner, they'll lose their home, they'll lose obviously that second income, they may not get a pension. So suddenly your whole life has changed.
Right.
On top of that, you may find that if your partner was estranged from their family, unless you are down as the next of kin, or it's written specifically in their wishes, that they want you to make those decisions, i.e. the last attorney. If you're kicked out of that, you have no legal recourse to come back in, and the family can take over. They'll make the decisions about things that that your partner wouldn't have wanted. And that is beyond upsetting and heartbreaking. Misgendering people still happens. Some people aren't out at all to other members of their family. How do we, as a community then, friends and family, say goodbye? Because we need to think about that. But one of the things I know at BSL, because my wife learnt it to use at work, and I could see the difference that it made. So I learned to use it in my main job. And again, it's just so wonderful to see the relief on someone's face. Go, oh, you signed. It's like, yes. And I'm not very good. Like, I've forgotten a lot of it, but if I'm going to try. It makes a big difference. But I know that there aren't any resources for deaf and hearing people around funerals and death and bereavement. So obviously, yes, you can get an interpreter in to sign for you, but there's a load of other things that you need to think about before you get to a funeral. Like, there's so much to consider. So I want to raise money. I want to be able to get this translated into BSL so that communities can access the information they need without having to go and find an interpreter and think these the questions they would need to ask if they don't know.
Yeah.
Because they don't know what they don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there are resources for people with learning difficulties. There are some really good resources out there. But even then, I have heard of some families just not wanting to have these conversations at all. Lippy People, which is a relatively local charity in West Yorkshire, I saw some very interesting stories from some of the people there, and one of them was saying that their parent had been murdered. Now, they didn't know. They knew that they weren't coming. They didn't understand why, and the family didn't want to tell them. But of course, that person's going out into the world. It's quite a high-profile thing, so it's on the news. Everybody else is talking about it. They're going to hear about it. You can't just not tell someone something because it's going to make you uncomfortable. You, as a person, have the right to know what's going on in your life, what the direct affects you. And yeah, that was quite horrible. It's like, that's just not okay. There are ways to have these conversations, but part of it is just being brave. And
well, it is, isn't it? I mean, it is unacceptable, but I also, I don't agree, but I understand why people don't have these conversations with their, in quotes, children, whether they're adults or not, because they want them. But at the same time, it's not protecting anyone.
it's not.
Because it perpetuates the loss, the discomfort, the grief that that person's facing, because they don't know what's going on as well.
Yeah, and how confusing is that? Like, people know, children know.
Yeah.
You get a sense, you feel, you walk into a room, everyone's crying, or they're angry, and then you think you've done something wrong. And that's not the case, but that internalizes so much trauma for a child.
Absolutely.
And for anyone with a learning disability who can't fully communicate what they're feeling, but they know that something's not right.
Yeah.
One of my funeral directors was dealing with a family, and they'd said, is there anybody preparing for the funeral itself at the crematorium? Is there anyone that needs a sign language interpreter? No. And then she said she was horrified when in the congregation there was someone there who was deaf, who needed an interpreter, but he had no idea what's going on because nobody could communicate that to him. And she was very embarrassed and felt awful. It's like, you've asked. We're not gonna. We don't know. And of course, interpreters cost money, as they should be paid. It's a huge job.
It's also amazing. I mean, would it be amazing? You know how you can buy funeral packages? Wouldn't it be amazing if it was part of a funeral package? Like, it could be an optional, but for somebody who is really grieving and having to kind of put this together for them, oh, would you like to select the option? Oh, yes, no, I nearly forgot to put that. And then done.
Except that what we talked about earlier, when you're in that state, you said you hadn't even thought about people who are deaf needing an interpreter. You have all access requirements at a funeral because you're in that grief state. So, of course, if you are in that grief state and it isn't necessarily someone that's close to you, there's definitely you're not thinking. And I think it wasn't that it hadn't been asked. It's just they have thought about it.
Yeah.
Realised actually they did need that. But again, I suppose this is about educating people to say, actually, I'm going to go to this funeral. I'm going to need an interpreter. Who can I speak to about? And letting people know in advance so that it can be organised. So the pressure was always on the guy who's organising the funeral actually other people can go, right, okay, Harry's coming to this, he needs the interpreter. Shall I contact the funeral director and get that arranged? Awesome. Or you can bring your own or whatever. It's being brave. And I think we're quite British, aren't we? We don't want to make it fast. If this is important.
It is important. In any other ways, we would advocate for our rights. But it's difficult at a funeral because you're in front of a grieving family. I went to a funeral a few weeks ago, and it was a lovely funeral. It was a disabled person that died, a wheelchair user, and so there were quite a few wheelchair users, and we were all wheeled into the front. And then we had to sit at the front until everybody else was in, and then we had to get our spaces, and then we had to wait for everyone to leave. So we were like all kind of positioned around the coffin, and then we were wheeled down at the end. And then I am an advocate and an activist for disability rights, and then now we're not actually, but it's not the time and the place.
It isn't. However, again, having these conversations with your funeral director before the event means that, or the celebrant as well, we can ensure that everything is laid out so that you do have enough room to get in. You can go and visit a crematorium, go visit one. So A, so you know what to expect, but B, so you know what the layout is, and you go, okay, if we're going to have 5 wheelchair users. This one's got a very, very big chair. This one's on a scooter or whatever. So we need access for people to move around. Things like that. It's so important. Also because we need time. Some funerals, crematoriums, you only have 20 minutes. So if as a celebrant, I'm going, right, so I've got maybe 5 minutes to get the congregation in. I need 5 minutes at the end to get the congregation out. That means I have 10 minutes of ceremony. Now, if I know that we have people with limited mobility or other things coming in, I'm like, right, we're going longer. That means I've got shorter time, so I'd have to write to a shorter time. So in that case, do we need a double slot? So there's lots of practical things to think. And these are things that nobody else is going to think unless you're actually within this industry as an undertaker or as a celebrant that you think, okay, right, I need to think about this, or a crematorium assistant. And also, you don't have to have your funeral after crematorium. It can be somewhere else, which takes away that time constraint and also means that you have enough space. You can go to a place that's beautiful and accessible, and means that you just feel a bit easier about. You're not on a conveyor belt. And unfortunately, a lot of funerals now they fill up a conveyor belt because literally you've got the deceased, you've got the current funeral going on, you've got the one that's previously than just out the back, and you've got the people up front waiting to come in. If any one of those is late, it messes up the whole thing. There are other options. Having a celebration of life, being able to actually pre-plan what you want means that it takes some of that pressure away. There is no legal requirement really around how it.
I think that's really interesting, and I agree with you. As the person in charge, as the professional, it's our job to know these things. So as a trainer, it's my job to think about how delegates are going to engage and interact. And therefore, I have to guide my client when they say, oh, I think we should get everybody to jump up and down for 10 minutes. To think, do we? Nobody's having a good moment. That's going to help people. Goal of that. And so, and as the professional, we take that responsibility to guide people. I'm also thinking about kind of, so if I think about funerals I've been to where the deceased is a disabled person, specifically then actually, I've been to, as an adult, not as a child, I've been to quite a few funerals where the deceased has been a disabled person and the funeral has been arranged by either their husband's wife, partner, or family member. And with all the best intentions, the family member has decided how the disabled people are going to be organised. And it's clear that that's what's happened. And it's with the best intentions. And I think that's where these things kind of fall apart a bit. And I know, as we're talking about today, I know that accessibility and inclusion is a very strong part of what you do, and it drives what you do to make it inclusive. Do you think it should be a prerequisite for a celebrant or a funeral director to kind of have that background knowledge to be able to guide people in those kind of directions?
I think it would be great if we could, if that was part of it. And one of the things I've done recently was part of the Celebrant Circle. Myself and Trey and others, we delivered a session on inclusivity around, specifically around ADHD, autism, so neurodivergence, and trans, but also lesbian, gay, bisexual people as well, the whole alphabet mafia, just to help the celebrants think about things that they haven't thought about before. We talk to the things that we know, and sometimes we need someone to go, is it that though? Does everyone have a loving family? Are everyone's parents wonderful? Does everyone come from a two-parent family that is straight? Let's try and move away from some of the phrases that we might use. Think about how to be more inclusive in your language. And I think, yes, that could be rolled out to many people within the sort of the death industry. To be fair, a lot of undertakers, funeral directors are wonderful. They've been doing it for a long time. They have thought about these things. Crematoriums are accessible, some of them, and that's great. But accessible for you might be something different to accessible for me, and that's something that people don't think about. Generally, I think people think, oh, if it's accessible, they think wheelchair rather than okay, is it really bright? Is it really loud? Does the sound going to bounce off walls and like drive me crazy? There's all sorts of other things that we need to think about. Do you have a disabled toilet that's accessible? I did a vow renewal last year for a couple, and the police, the venue that they chose, said it was accessible. And they had an accessible toilet, yes. What they didn't say was that in 2 levels, so in order to get to the accessible toilet or wherever, you had to go out of the venue and then go in the way.
Right.
Really inaccessible. Oh, it's just a small step. Great, okay. How am I going to get the power chair or the wheelchair up? Actually, can't lift our legs very easily. This is going to cause a lot more difficulties. Cobbled streets, there's just so many different things. So this is why it's really important to go and do a site visit first, and I reckon, okay, this isn't actually accessible. Line getting into gendered toilets, all the rest of it, that's a whole other thing. And again, it's the language that we use is very important. So I think, but it's a big change for people. It's a really big change to get someone to think differently and to change everything. Some people have to actually be on board with wanting to do that and to see why it's important. It's not just lip service. We need to actually understand and to make the change.
What would you recommend that somebody who is planning a funeral either for themselves or somebody else ask their funeral director or celebrant to ensure that the service is going to be inclusive in the way they see inclusion?
So firstly, what does that mean to you? So if you were pre-planning your funeral or you were planning a funeral on behalf of someone else, what does that inclusion mean to you? So we would need to think what that is. So for you, it needs to be wheelchair accessible. Everything needs to be wide enough for you to be able to go through and turn around and those kind of things. There has to be a toilet. We need to work out what does that mean to you. If you're visually impaired or you're hard of hearing, I've had services where I've printed off a script, but I've put it in like 16 font, whatever, so it's bigger. So the person, people who are visually impaired or very old and struggling with seeing things, so they could read along. Do we need a sign language interpreter? Do we need an interpreter for another language altogether? Like making sure that the interpreters can see in the script beforehand, so it's going to be said. There's so many different things, but you need to know what it is that you want first, and then communicate that clearly to your undertaker and your celebrant, who should be communicating all the time your service anyway. That is good practice, and make sure that they tell you what they've done. Is this okay? Do you need anything else? And honestly, a majority of undertakers will be bending again backwards to make sure that everything is right for you. But you really need to be able to give us a clear idea of what it is that you want, because I'm not a mind reader. I need you to tell me.
Yeah.
And I will do my best to
Really?
ask
Yeah.
lots of questions. I may miss something. So you need to be brave and tell me what it is that you want.
I think that's a really good question, though. Just that one question, what does inclusion look like for you?
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we do in good conversations about adjustments in the workplace. We're not making any assumptions at all. We're saying, what does good look like for you? And then we can ask a lot of prompt questions to help that person get to that answer. And we can support them with some ideas. But we're not making any assumptions, but by saying, I want to start by hearing more from you.
Yeah.
Kind of like consultative approach. Yeah.
Absolutely. And a good celebrant or a good undertaker is going to hear what you're not saying as well.
Yeah.
So that's part of the skill that we have is we'll ask you questions, but it's also, okay, I'm also not hearing this. And have you considered this or what is it?
Yeah.
So that's another thing that's important. And I think if you are pre-planning your funeral, make sure that you write down all your wishes, what you want. There are lots of great resources out there. Legacy Share is an app that you can use, or you can log onto their website and fill your details in and then give access to somebody within your family. The reason it's important that you tell somebody else and that someone that you trust is your wishes don't have to be honoured.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And I've been in a position where I've been working with someone before they died, and then they died, and everything out. This person had agreed they wanted, we did all good to go, and the family were absolutely horrified and said,
Wow.
didn't want back. And it was the first time that happened to me, and I was really very shaken. I was like, that's what they wanted.
Yeah.
This is what they've said. They've agreed, and we've agreed. And I know that I'm like, okay, so you are now the client for telling me this is what you want, and I have to go,
Yeah.
or I'm taking to someone else. So it's really important that you include your loved ones or friends and family within this process so they understand what it is that you want.
Yeah. Yeah. All I want is lots of Robbie Williams songs. Anything else can happen. I don't care.
And you don't care.
And if Robbie himself is there, that's even better.
Well, okay. See what we can do.
Thank you. This is recorded.
Okay.
Yeah. We've talked a lot about kind of, I know a big part of kind of your identity being a celebrant. And I know that you have a full-time job elsewhere as well. But that's, as all of us, that's only one side of who you are. So tell us a bit more about you. What drives your passion for equality?
So firstly, I work part-time elsewhere. So because of my, I have fibromyalgia and a few other things, but it's my main kind of disability. It's invisible, and that affects how much I can do on a day-to-day basis. So finally, after many years, I've worked out I can work 2 days a week, not to back. It helps me to manage my energy and my pain, and then I do some work in between without too much, so I'm not overdoing it. And plus, I want to give as much to my families as I can. Need something doing that. Certain needs I can't. It's who I am. So when I first decided that I was going to be a celebrant, and I was thinking about how I was going to market myself, I thought, well, if I'm looking for somebody, I want someone that's a bit like me. So I'm a queer, brown, disabled woman. And as far as I'm aware, I can't see anybody else out there who's looking like me. And the celebrant world is generally quite white. It's generally quite female. It's women of a certain age, like myself. Majority are probably straight. And I thought, well, that's fine. But if I want me, then other people are going to want someone that understands them as well. So it's why I decided to market myself in the way I have. And I know that's probably gone against me in some ways, because one of the undertakers I worked with a couple of years, who was very lovely and very positive and everything, but she went to the client and said, "Oh, I found you the perfect person," and she's brown, and That's great. The client was also brown. We got on with a very similar background. However, I think what can happen is that you get pigeonholed. You're going to work with this particular kind of personal client. And that isn't the case. I'm happy to work with anybody. But, and fair enough, I have embraced marking myself in a particular way. However,
I think
yeah.
I think people misunderstand the importance of representation and what pride is about. But for people who are thinking, well, what's wrong with that? Do you mind just unpacking that a little bit?
What I would say is that the funeral was for a gay man. So initially they wanted a gay man to do the ceremony. And there just aren't many, there aren't many of us who are cons. And none of the men that wouldn't like me suitable were able to. So I'd said, I'm really happy to do it, but bear in mind, I am a woman. And actually it was one of my favourite services to do. It's absolutely lovely. The film director, very well meaning.
Yeah.
No harm meant at
Yeah.
all. And I think she was very excited because she'd found in her eyes the best person for the job. And I guess as a client, maybe she was very happy because I was brown. So that was an additional thing. But that assumes so many different.
Yeah.
It assumes so much. I don't even know if I got the energy to unpack it all. To be honest. It's just.
And you know what? The reason I said, can you unpack it? And I yeah, sorry, that was a tough one. I apologize. It can be really difficult, can't it? I think, well, for people who perhaps don't have those kind of oppression struggles in the same way. So I'm not talking for everyone. Representation for me is about role models, seeing other people who have achieved and look and present and have very similar, not very, but similar experiences to me, things that I can identify with. But also kind of this, it comes into, I think it kind of builds on that conversation, I don't see colour. And it's not about, oh, I'm colourblind.
Don't even get me started on that one.
It's not about, I'm only going to hire you if you're brown, but it's about we acknowledge being proud of who we are as people, being proud of the struggles that we've been through, but also what we've achieved. So, I mean, not proud of the struggle, acknowledging the struggles and being proud of what we achieved. So as a disabled person, I am so proud that my rights as a disabled person were fought for by other disabled people. Kind of,
yes.
I don't know how to describe it, but it gives me like bubbles in my stomach every time I think about the people who had fought for me, and I'm so envious that they got to fight for me, and I wasn't. Because some of those protests sounded bloody amazing, actually.
Absolutely.
And I don't know if I've gone off the subject a little bit, but I might look at somebody who I identify with and think, oh, brilliant. I won't have to validate myself. I won't have to explain myself. But at the same time,
yes,
I'm not, oh, you're the same colour skin as me. You'll be brilliant. You know, that it's not as simple as that. It's so much more layered than more.
It is. It's so much more layered. And coming back to, I think, the comment about intersectionality, I'm not just one thing. Yes, I'm a cis woman. I'm 52. I'm perimenopausal. I live with invisible kind of disabilities. I also have ADHD. And my household there's 3 adults that live here, and we have a collection of disabilities within the house, which are all invisible, from POTS to ME to fibromyalgia to EDS, migraines, all sorts of things. And yeah, the fact that I'm in a lesbian presenting marriage, people make assumptions about my sexuality. One of the things that I celebrated 10 years at my other job, and the things my manager was saying was how wonderful. They never knew how I was feeling, as in I didn't show that I was in pain all the time. Like I just turned up and got with my job. And that's great. There's also a whole heap of ableism in there as well. There's a lot to kind of unpack, but we are the sum of our parts. And just because you see someone that looks like you, that is immediately, that's good, that's great. Being aware that person may not be anything like you.
Yeah.
And actually they have all these other things going on.
Yeah.
And Yeah, whether it's your sexual orientation or your gender, all these different things people don't know. And you can choose to be out. You don't have to be. Probably gone off topic there, but
I think it's relevant. I remember, so my sister got married a couple of years ago, and they're a lesbian couple. And it was very important to them that all of the, I don't know, the people around the wedding, as in like the makeup artist, the celebrant, the photographer, they were from the community as well. But I think for my sister, it was more about boosting that community.
yes.
And providing, not that people couldn't have opportunities unless Hattie hired them, but kind of helping with those kind of, I'm not articulating this properly, but kind of, yeah.
No, I get what you mean.
That community.
Yeah, because we do have less opportunities, especially if you present differently. There is an assumption of who you are, and therefore people don't necessarily want to work with you or employ you. Rebel Love Directory is one place that gathers a lot of the queer wedding community together.
Wow.
So you can go and search and find makeup artists and
You probably went
arrangers, celebrants, etc., etc. So that it makes sense because you also want to be safe. You want to be surrounded by people.
That's true.
But just because someone is also brown doesn't mean they're homophobic.
Exactly.
And there can be a lot of racism within and homophobia within the disabled community. And even within the gay community, the biphobia is huge. There can be a lot of racism as well. There's so much, even talking about voting. I'm so proud to be able to vote. I'm like you, I'm like I have to vote, whether I can find someone that I fully agree with or not. It's like, right, women died to give me that ability. But also I'm fully aware that the suffragettes were very white and that initial movement was not inclusive or working class people at all. That came later. So everything is layered. So we just have to be careful. And I think it's about providing a space where you feel safe and surrounding yourself with people who do look like you or sound like you and who have the similar mindset. And
celebrate
important
as well. And I'll say I know lots of wheelchair users that I do not like at all. Probably more than the ones I do.
Yes. And also, I mean, just because you're disabled or in a wheelchair or whatever doesn't give you the right to be a dick.
Yes.
So true. And it doesn't mean that you can't be challenged on your behaviour.
Absolutely.
Like, or the way that you've said things or whatever. That doesn't, your differences and difficulties in life do not cancel anybody else's.
Yeah.
We still have to be decent people. So
somebody said something very pertinent to me not to me, they weren't saying it about me, but we were talking and they said it. And I think it should be quoted actually. Just because you're disabled, it doesn't mean you're not a dick. And that's so true.
But yeah, this is the thing. It's like, and I think sometimes people, oh no, we can't say anything and can't challenge. It's like you can, definitely you can.
Yeah.
Like, there's so much privilege everywhere, and just because you don't have my difficulties doesn't mean that you can't understand that I'm having difficulties, and it's not cake.
Is there anything that you feel that we haven't discussed?
I think one thing I'd like to say is that bereavement education is now going to be part of the curriculum in schools as of the 1st of September, which is amazing. But that also comes with, I don't know what that's going to look like. I know a lot of celebrants and other funeral directors have been reaching out to schools to try and get them to say that we're here, we want to support you, but not really getting a lot back. And I don't know how much this has been, how much the society knows this is coming. Because this will impact not just children, their families. Because again, going back to sex education, as parents, you're talking to my child, I'm going to withdraw. That doesn't help that child.
No.
But also, what are you learning at home? What conversations are you having? So we need to be able to teach the parents or their families as well. So, yeah, it's great that it's coming in. And Joe Adams has worked tirelessly with the government and the Good Grief Trust to really rally and to make this happen. And it's so important.
So I know you just said there's a lot of unknowns at the moment, but is it going to be part of teacher training, and is it going to be catch-up training for teachers?
I don't know. I mean, I was at a call last night. What we think will probably happen, especially in secondary schools, is that it'll be given to the PHSE teachers to deal with.
Yeah.
Whether there is specialist training, I don't know. I know that there are some lesson plans there. Some PM directors have already been going into schools and having some great conversations with children, bringing a hearse to the school so the kids can have a look and see what it is. And yeah, I think that's really very important, taking away the mystery of it all and the confusion of it all. I talked a little bit about language before and how important it is to be clear. So with children and with people with learning disabilities or difficulties, how we talk about what happens when we die is very key, and not to be too flowery and metaphorical, because it can actually be more terrifying. They go, what's that? Yeah. What's that? Oh, I'm sorry that you've lost your such and such. Okay, but you've lost your gloves. You lost your gloves and you found them.
Yeah.
Why can't you go and find such and such? Oh, don't worry, Granny's looking down from you from heaven. That actually is kind of creepy.
That's creepy. Go away, Granny.
Yeah, right. Or mummy's always watching you, or she's watching you when you're sleeping.
No, nightmares. Yeah.
No. Yeah. So just being very clear about their body stop working. Yeah, their heart stop beating. If children are worried, or if someone's worried that they're going to feel cold, no, they don't feel cold anymore. They feel physically cold if you touch them, but they don't feel that because they're not there anymore. Yeah. Being able to work people again, should we take them to the funeral? Yes. If it's appropriate, I think, for me, I'm always going to lean on the yes, because we need closure. If you don't have closure, then it leads to a lot of complications with grief, and it can lead to a lot of anxiety, depression, and other behavioural issues because, kids are confused. So, the Lippy Project has done a lot of work with their service users around these kind of things, and just hearing their stories is really powerful, and understanding why it's so important to communicate and to talk to people.
And think about people with conditions and learning disabilities, taking things literally. So if Granny, well,
yes,
why were you so careless? Where did she go? What were we doing to find her? Do you know what I mean? And
yes,
it is.
Yeah, but it's
just the
language you're right.
that is so misguiding, isn't it? And I think, I don't know if it was just a Grey's Anatomy thing or if this actually happens in hospitals, but in Grey's Anatomy, the doctors, when they were training the trainee doctors, they were saying, don't use ambiguous language, say it. She's passed away. She's passed away, sorry, she's died.
She's died, yes.
So there's no way to misinterpret what's been said.
Exactly. And I think that, that does happen. And I think that is the way we need to approach it. Yes, so my mum died just over a year ago, and I've had a couple of weeks of feeling a bit mucky, and I said to my wife, how are you feeling about it? How do you feel about I'm dying? Because she was your mother-in-law. I said, it was a year ago, I've moved on. And that's okay, that's her brain, that's how it works. She was upset at the time, done. So there are different ways of grieving, but also our brains work very differently. But yes, finish taking things literally. If we're doing that, we really have to be very clear about what we're saying.
Yeah.
And with religion, again, that can also be a bit confusing. That doesn't, I'm not trying to be disrespectful to religions at all, but sometimes isn't clear.
Yeah.
So again, just making sure we are giving the correct information in a way that people actually understand.
Yeah.
And checking back with them. What do you think I mean by that?
And it doesn't take away from the rituals and the tradition.
No, not at all.
It's a religious tradition. It's just also making sure that person understands as well. So again, in the workplace, I always say it would be impossible to remove metaphors and idioms from one's language because they're so ingrained But it's about
They are,
then
yes.
reiterating what we actually mean. So I have an autistic friend who I always tell the story of training sessions with his permission. So I said to him once, he called me when I had just been thinking about what we were going to do. And so I said, "Oh, your ears must have been burning." He said, "No, they're not. They're fine." And I said, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, Alex."
Because,
He did
yes,
it again a few weeks later. And I was like, you know what? You are a great
clearly,
reminder of how many idioms I actually use in my language. And it's not about removing them. It's about saying, this is what I actually mean.
yes. Yeah, because it is actually neurotypical language is very confusing.
Yeah.
There's so much that is, if you don't know,
straightforward
there's
language.
absolutely, like, yeah, like, just say what you mean, like, honestly. But another bit to this, I think, is quite important that we don't discount people going to see a dead body.
Yeah.
And that's partly why I think it's really important that we bring death back into the community, is that this is a natural part of the life cycle. It's going to happen, but it's okay for children or people with learning difficulties and disabilities to see the person who's died. It makes it very clear that's what's happened. They're not going to come back to life. And yeah, just understanding it's okay. You can hold their hand. You can give them a kiss goodbye. You can tell them about your day. Like, that's okay. It doesn't. I think we need to move away from the scary and just this is it. Daddy has died. We need to go and say goodbye. That's okay.
Yeah.
And your undertaker can help with that. But also you, if someone's died at home and it's suspicious, then you can gather friends and family around. You can wash and bathe and dress them in the clothes that you want. Just take a moment.
I do love how you say if it's not suspicious. So if you haven't buried your family member under the patio,
Please don't do that.
Yeah,
No.
no.
But you can, if you own a house, you own the property, you can bury somebody in the back garden, as long as it doesn't affect the waterline, and you have to put it in the deeds, because the next person that buys the house needs to understand that there is so yes,
forest. I'm sorry, that was a joke. And it's interesting to know that yes, under no suspicious circumstances.
Yeah, like if it's sudden and unexpected and or there's been an accident or left, it'd be call everybody that you need to. If it's an expected death, take a beat, you don't, it's okay. But yeah.
So we have been talking, I mean, this is such an interesting subject. Thank you so much for educating me in this subject, as well as our listeners. A lot of our listeners work in the equality, diversity and inclusion space. And the learning development space as well. So how, and I know how, so it's a rhetorical question that I also want you to answer.
Not rhetorical.
How is this relevant to our audience, and what advice would you give to our audience?
So it's really important that you are able to support your workforce and yourselves, because it's going to happen as a point, but you understand what someone's likely to be going through and have support when they come back to work. One of the things that was lovely when I was off is I suddenly got a bunch of flowers from work, which I didn't know was going to happen. That really was very touching. So little things like that. Checking in on them, but not pressuring them. Make sure they understand about the bereavement leave. Make sure you've got the good policy in place around that. And if you're not going to be paying your staff when they're off, well, that's okay, really. When I was a coroner's officer, I remember someone coming to see me, and her workplace gave her no time off whatsoever paid.
Wow.
Which was just appalling. So please support your staff mentally, as well as physically and practically. Give them, pay them. But also to think about your clients. So one of the things that's really frustrating when you're ringing round telling people that your person has died is having to repeat the bloody story over and over again. Especially if you've been put through, if you're ringing one company but you're put through to a couple of different departments, and then having to repeat the story over again. And make sure you have clear procedures around that, so that you understand what your client is going through, that they might cry, they might not fully understand what's going on, they might be confused, they might just give up because they've had enough. And so think about how you can make the journey easier for the client. That's very important. So yeah, have some good policies and procedures in place, and talk to somebody who understands what's going to
Yeah.
happen. They can guide you.
I think that's really good advice. And from what you were saying earlier as well about if you're a manager supporting your employee through that process, I think there's a lot of synergies there with kind of how we talk about support that people need in the workplace as well. So it's all about it's compassion, empathy, listening, not making assumptions, but
Yeah.
also looking for when you as a manager need it as well. And
Yeah, because it's...
sorry.
Well, no, I'm just going to say it's difficult. It's not easy, especially because your employees are going to disclose things to you and they're going to need support, and that you in turn may need support. So do you have private medical care in place where you can refer someone to employee support programs, counselling, etc.? That's part of looking after your employees. If you look after your employees, then they're going to look after you. You have to really...
And I think the listeners want to be inclusive because they know it's a moral thing that we should all be doing. But I know that some of our listeners also work in workplaces where executive teams need a bit more kind of understanding around this. So, I mean, there is a business case to doing this right as well for the bottom line. There's a business case for getting it right for our employees, but also getting it right for our clients as well. Because clients talk to their friends who are your clients as well. I was just going to say, I love this idea of say it once. I mean, we talk about it a lot in kind of setting up profiles for theatre. So I can call the National, for example, and say, I'm Essie Hardy, and they know what my access requirements are. So that when I book tickets, I don't have to say, I'm a wheelchair, and I need an accessible loo, and yes, we've got it all for you, and here's Robbie. And it would be great if you could do that in this process as well, that say it once, when you set up your profile.
I just had an image. Sorry, yes.
And that's continue with the image. That's great.
Nope. Robbie or Plath, I don't know.
And the next episode,
but yes, even the Tell It Once service actually wasn't great. My wife is laughing in the background because it was pretty awful. Like, all it does is tell them you still have to speak to them. So it doesn't actually take away anything, and we still had these complications. I think it was earlier this year I had a letter from the council or something saying that we owed money. This is 12 months since Mum had died. I'm like, why are you... But this has all been sorted. I know it's been sorted.
Yeah.
Like, why is this coming back? So I make sure again that you're not contacting people that you shouldn't be. Another example, a friend of mine was at their family member's funeral, and the hospital rang to find out why the person hadn't appeared for their appointment on the morning of the funeral. There are certain things that, if you've been told, make sure that you have done the paperwork, you press the buttons on the computer so that you're not disturbing people at a totally inappropriate time and asking for this person who has died to appear or to sign paperwork or whatever. You really need to be very, very hot on making sure that everything is tied up properly, because... Yeah, especially if someone's died and it's expected, it's emotional. Yes, there's all of that. But if someone's had a very sudden loss, or has been murdered or died in a horrific accident, it's so much worse. And to have to ring and speak to someone and repeat the information over and over again it's cruel. And I think that's what I'd like to see from companies, is to make sure that the people on the other end of the phone are understanding and just do their job properly, because... it's the last thing we want.
Yeah, absolutely, yes. So we're nearly at the end of our episode. So I've started asking my guests this question. So if you were looking at yourself when you started your career, and I mean career as in kind of business career, work career, but also I mean career in terms of after kind of leaving education onwards, so learning about yourself, what would you say to yourself that you wish you knew then?
I mean, I started about when I was 13 as a Saturday girl in local veterinary surgery, and then left school at 16 to go and do veterinary nursing full time. But I think I would have had no idea that my life would turn out the way that it has. I think what I'd probably say to myself is just to go with the flow and to enjoy all of the differences, the different careers and jobs that I've had that have enabled me to find this particular path. And to just take every opportunity and do as much as I can. But that it's my path is not going to be straightforward. And that's okay. Not to beat myself up for the fact that my life does not look like what I thought it would look like when I was the young person.
I think that it might sound simple when we get older, but I think it's so real even when you are kind of in your 30s, 40s and 50s. Don't give yourself such a hard time. And I think we forget that. We give that advice to others, but we don't give it to ourselves. Be a friend to yourself, I think, is a really good message.
Absolutely. And it's never too late to start over. Like you can start over at any age, and it's fine. Actually, you have more experience than you think you do.
Yeah.
If you're late diagnosed, you're a divergent like I am, you can just forgive yourself for not knowing any different. And it's grieving that old life and the things that could have been. But at the same time, I just have so much more experience in other things that now I've come across a completely unusual profession that I'm in, which is great. So
brilliant. Thank you. I ask people if they have any influences that they want to share. So that could be people, books, music, anything really.
Yeah, I'm very eclectic. So I collect, I have lots of different interests in lots of different things. And
do you have a go-to?
Music-wise, I love Pink. I do, yeah. And I love her attitude about life and her body shape and everything else, which is not this typical, pretty kind of slim. She's so physical and energetic and gymnastic and I just think she's great.
Where can people find out more about you?
So my website is Black Cats and Unicorns. So that's all kind of one, blackcatsandunicorns.co.uk. The idea for that came from, we have a cat now, we had two, but Albus loves to snuggle up with his little unicorn. And I just had this image of kind of love and death, life and death, this balance. So that's where that came from. But you can also find me on Instagram at Black Cats and Unicorns again. And I also I've been doing some training with the Coffin Club. So I'm now going to be having the Leeds Coffin Club, where I do a regular drop-in at Flamingo's Cafe once a month. So you can find me there. I am on LinkedIn, but I'm not there very often.
Okay.
I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with social media, so Instagram more than anything, or you can contact me on the website. There's also should be an image with my WhatsApp QR code, so you can contact me there if you want to.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Can you just tell us, have you got 2 minutes to tell us a bit about Coffin Club?
Yeah, so Coffin Club started in Australia, and it was quite an incredible project, really. But basically, people gathered to build coffins, to get in coffins, to decorate them, to learn about all sorts of things to do with dying and funerals. And Coffin Club over here, initially run by the two Kates down in the Hastings area, I think. And they kind of rolled out, people can do their training and then it gets rolled out wherever you are locally. So the idea is that we'll have maybe a short course where we'll cover some basics around being able to talk about death, what are our fears around it, how the language that we use, talking about the different types of funerals that you can have. Visiting an undertaker, going to physically see some coffins, maybe get inside one, just to take the fear and things away from it. Know that you can decorate your own coffin, shrouds, what all these different things are. There's a new form of cremation, water cremation, which is now legal in Scotland over here, waiting for it to be rolled out in the rest of the UK. Thinking about if you want to do it all yourself, so you don't have to involve an undertaker, that would entail. So lots of things like that. So it's less of a grief group and more of an educational.
Education. Interesting. Sounds interesting. I don't live in Leeds, but if I did, I would definitely come along. Michelle, thank you so much. I found this episode really interesting. I've learned a lot. So yeah, thank you so much for generously donating your time and educating all of us. And also, I've really enjoyed this conversation. You've been great to talk to. So yeah, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you, Essie. I've
Thank
really
you
enjoyed
so
it
much.
too. Yes.
And thank you, everybody, for tuning in and listening. If you have a little call to action for you, if you know of anyone who you think would be a good guest, if yourself would like to be a guest, or if you have any topics you're like, I wish Essie would talk about that in the realm of inclusion. It doesn't have to be disability equality, it could be any equality. Get in touch. Click on the link to go to the Celebrating Disability website and send us an email. I'd love to hear. But until next time, bye everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to like, subscribe, and press the notification button so you don't miss anything. If you're watching on Spotify, give us a 5-star rating.